Welcome. If you're like us, you want to get past the headlines, really understand the big events quickly, you want the core insights right. Well, that's what we do here. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something very recent and, frankly, quite significant. Operation Sindoor.
Yeah, this Indian Air Force operation, it's not just another news item. It's got potentially huge implications for, well, regional security, counterterrorism strategy,
Yeah.
the whole picture. So our aim today is to really unpack it for you, go beyond just the surface facts. We want to look at what happened, the why behind it, the strategic thinking, and importantly, the different ways people are seeing this event. We'll stick to the available info to keep it clear.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. What was the immediate trigger? What actually kicked off Operation Sindoor?
The trigger, sadly, was a horrific terrorist attack. This happened on May 6th, 2025. A convoy carrying Hindu pilgrims in Pahalgam, that's in Jammu and Kashmir, was attacked. And the outcome was tragic, 26 people killed, including women and children. This attack, attributed to groups operating from across the border, caused, as you'd expect, massive outrage across India.
Right, a terrible event. And how did the Indian government frame their response, their decision to launch this military operation?
They termed it a non-escalatory preemptive counter-terror operation. Now, that's quite a phrase. Essentially, the official line was, this is necessary action, necessary to dismantle terrorist support infrastructure, stop future attacks. But, and this is key, done in a way intended not to spark a wider war. Of course, calling airstrikes inside another country non-escalatory. Well, that's a point of contention, isn't it?
Absolutely, a very fine line to walk, if it can be walked at all. So who specifically were they targeting, and where did these strikes happen?
India named specific groups, Lashkar-e-Taiba, or LET, Jaish-e-Mohammed Jabam, and also some factions of Hizbul Mujahideen. These are groups India has consistently accused of receiving external support. Now, the operation itself involved hitting 9 locations, pretty much simultaneously. These included places like Muzaffarabad, Rawalakot, Kotli, and significantly, Bahawalpur. What really stands out is that some of these, like Bahawalpur, are quite deep within Pakistani territory, not just near the border.
9 locations at once. Wow, that suggests a really high level of military planning and capability. Can you give us a sense of the military execution?
Oh, absolutely. The scale, hitting 9 spots in sync like that, points to very detailed preparation, precision execution. The Indian Air Force used some of their top assets. We know Rafale jets were involved. And the weapons mentioned are quite specific. Scalar P cruise missiles, those are long range, and ASM hammer precision bombs. The SCAL-P missiles suggest hitting targets from a distance, standoff capability to reduce risk to pilots. And the hammer bombs are precision-guided, which implies an effort, at least stated, to hit specific targets and limit collateral damage. The whole thing was reportedly over in about 23 minutes. Start to finish, that kind of speed points towards efficiency, probably helped by advanced electronic warfare systems to jam or confuse defenses.
23 minutes, that's incredibly fast for something so complex. What did India's Ministry of Defense say afterwards? What was their official message?
Their statement stressed that they took measures to avoid hitting Pakistani military personnel or civilians. They described Operation Sindoor using terms like precise, limited in scope, and strategically necessary. Again, reinforcing that narrative. This was targeted, not widespread, and aimed purely at preventing future terrorism originating from those sites.
And Pakistan's reaction, I imagine it was anything but accepting.
Oh, definitely not. Pakistan condemned the strikes in the strongest possible terms. They called it a violation of sovereignty, even an act of war. They also reported civilian casualties on their side. Specifically, the death of a young child in Bahawalpur was mentioned, which is incredibly tragic. And importantly, Pakistan claimed its air defenses shot down multiple Indian aircraft. That's a claim India hasn't confirmed, mind you.
So you have conflicting claims, accusations. That must have immediately ratcheted up the tension, right?
Hugely. Both countries put their air forces on high alert straight away, and that, naturally, set off alarm bells around the world. The prospect of escalation between 2 nuclear-armed states, so it's always deeply concerning.
Understandably. How did the rest of the world react? What was the international response?
It was mixed, but mostly cautious, I'd say. You had the UN, the US, China, Russia, all the major players calling for restraint, urging dialogue. But interestingly, there were reports that India received some level of, let's say, tacit support or understanding from several Western countries. This probably reflects a wider international acknowledgement of the problem of terrorism emanating from groups based in Pakistan.
Okay, let's pull back for the bigger picture. Strategically, what does Operation Sindoor really mean for India? Is this a fundamental change?
I think it represents a pretty significant evolution in India's counterterrorism thinking. A shift, perhaps. If you compare it to earlier actions, like the 2016 surgical strikes or the 2019 Balakot airstrike, this operation looks different. It demonstrated a greater scale, more sophisticated military hardware in use, and perhaps a greater degree of strategic confidence, hitting multiple targets deep inside territory simultaneously. That signals a step up in capability and, arguably, willingness to act decisively. It suggests India might be recalibrating its red lines regarding cross-border terrorism.
And looking ahead, what are the potential long-term effects? Where does this leave things?
Well, in the short term, both sides seem to clamp down on information flow pretty tightly. And there were reports, unconfirmed but plausible, of back-channel diplomacy trying to cool things down. But the underlying risk, the potential for retaliation from Pakistan, that definitely remains. It's hard to see regional tensions just disappearing. Operation Sindoor has, without doubt, changed the strategic equation in South Asia somewhat. It sets a new precedent, possibly, for how India might react to future major attacks.
So, if we need to boil this all down, what's the single most important takeaway from our deep dive into Operation Sindoor?
I'd say the core insight is this. Operation Sindoor likely marks a turning point. It signals India's increased willingness to use significant, swift military force across the border in response to terrorism. It seems to be sending a very clear message about India's tolerance, or rather intolerance, for what it sees as state-sponsored or state-ignored terrorism. And that action, that message, has definitely altered the strategic calculations for everyone involved in the region. It suggests a future where direct military responses might become, well, less unthinkable for India.
Yeah, definitely a lot for us and for you listening to think about. It's clearly a very complex situation, many layers, many perspectives.
Absolutely. And it really highlights that constant tension, that knife-edge balance between security actions and diplomatic fallout in a really volatile part of the world.
So here's a thought to leave you with. We've seen this shift, this evolution in India's strategy. Given that, what do you think the long-term consequences might be? For stability in the region, for the future of relations across that border, something complex to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.